Now, this story in the life of Daniel happens 15 years later than the one we looked at last week. So now Daniel and his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, are no longer teenagers. They're in their mid-30s. Now, King Nebuchadnezzar, remember, he's the emperor of the Babylonian Empire, which is the largest empire in the world at that time. He's the most powerful man in the world. What often comes with that is an ego. And his entire life, we're going to see more about this later in another week, Nebuchadnezzar dealt with the issue of pride and arrogance constantly. And this causes the next test. And it's a test that you're going to have in your life when the heat is on in your life. Now, the Bible tells us this. Daniel chapter 3, up here on the screen, it says this. King Nebuchadnezzar made a giant gold image of himself, 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide, and set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Now, friends, this is what you call an ego trip. You build a 90-foot statue to yourself, all right, and set it up on the plain. Then he, King Nebuchadnezzar, gave this order to all of his officials, to the princes and the prefects and the governors and the advisors and the treasurers and the judges and the magistrates and other officials. By the way, these are actually in the pecking order of that day. So the most powerful are at the front. The princes were the most powerful, then the prefects, then the governors. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, all three of them are governors. They've been appointed. They've been serving for 15 years. They're Jewish, but they're serving as governors in Babylon. So these are all the power people of that day. And he says, I want all you guys to come to the official dedication of this statue that he had set up. And then it says, when they had all assembled, an announcer shouted out, people of all races and nations and languages, this is the king's command. Anytime you hear the royal orchestra start playing music, you are all to immediately drop everything, fall to your knees, and bow and worship the image of King Nebuchadnezzar. As anyone who does not fall down and worship this idol, this image, will immediately be thrown into a giant blazing furnace, which he had made and put near the statue. Now, as soon as they heard the music, everybody bowed down before the statue and worshiped the image of King Nebuchadnezzar. All the leaders of Babylon all fall flat on their face. The orchestra starts playing. Everybody falls on their face to worship this big idol. 3 guys stood standing tall. They're stand-up guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, these 3 guys are Jewish guys. They're the governors of the province of Babylon because of their appointment last time. They'd gotten promoted on the last test. 3 guys stay standing. Everybody else in the nation is bowing. They're sticking out like a sore thumb. This made some people upset. They wanted to burn them. Daniel chapter 3, verse 8, up here on the screen. But some Babylonian officials used this opportunity to denounce the Jews. Now, they told the king, now listen to what a kiss up this is. They're really flattering the king. Oh, great king. Oh, great king. We hope you live forever. Yeah, right. We hope you live forever. They're just looking for a promotion themselves. But, they said, those guys over there, the Jewish officials that you put in charge of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they have defied your decree. Now, they have refused to serve your gods, and they have refused to bow down and worship your image that you set up. It's a self-installed image. So, he says, we recommend that they should be burned in the blazing furnace. Here's the story. When Nebuchadnezzar hears about 3 of his governors refusing to bow down, he has a fit. Verse 13, Daniel 3. Then Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage. He had an anger management problem too. And he ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought to him. Now the king asked them, is this true? Okay, is it true that the 3 of you, I appointed you as governors, you're high position guys. 3 of you refused to serve my gods or worship the gold statue I set up? He says, I'll give you one more chance. And he says this, if you bow down and you worship the statue, it's all forgiven, it's all forgotten, all will be well. But, he says, if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. The heat is on. And then, then he says, and then, this is a powerful statement, and then what God will be able to rescue you from my power? See what Nebuchadnezzar is doing? He's actually saying, we're going to have a little God contest. Who's really God, me or your supposed God? These guys did 4 things right when they were threatened with the heat in their life. Number 1, don't worry about defending myself. When you go to work and the heat is on you there for being a Christian or for making a moral stand or for doing the right thing or whatever it is, and somebody doesn't agree with you, doesn't like it, don't worry about defending yourself. Just quietly trust God to take care of your attackers. When you're in the fire, God's a whole lot better firefighter than you are. And he's got a whole lot more water than you do. In Daniel 3:16, the first thing they did was this. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, "O Nebuchadnezzar," he had said, "I'll give you one last chance." They said, "We don't need to defend ourselves in this matter." And by the way, implied here is God doesn't need us to defend him either. He says, we're not going to dignify your last question by answering it. He said, who's going to save you, me or God? So we're not going to answer that question. We're not going to try to defend ourselves. We're not worried about what's going to happen, and so we're not impressed by your threats. Don't worry when people attack you. Number 2, remember that God has the power to save me. Doesn't matter what kind of mess you're in, what kind of crisis, what kind of difficulty, what kind of fire you're trying to put out in your life right now. Just remember that God has the power to save me. God is God, which means he can do anything. And in Daniel 3:17, they said, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace. See, they still didn't know if, they were going to get laid off or let off for this. If we're thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we worship is able to save us. That's quite a statement. We know our God is able to, he's got the power to save us. But that's not enough. The third thing is, believe God will save me. When you're in the problem, when you're in a crisis, when you're faced with your whole life falling apart, you not only have to believe that God has the ability to help you, the ability to rescue you, the ability to deliver you and save you, you must believe he will. You must expect that he will save you. Not that he's just able, but that he will save you. And the second part of Daniel 3:17, they said, and he will save us from your power, O king. Now, think about this. Now, based on those 3 things, I'm not worried. I know what God can do, and I'm expecting him to do it. Number 4, I announce my loyalty to God no matter what. If you're having to get ready to go in and have a one-on-one with your boss or do a confrontation somewhere, you say, I'm announcing my loyalty to God no matter what the outcome of this conversation is or this confrontation is. And they said this, God has the ability to save us. We believe he will save us. But, verse 18, even if God doesn't save us, we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you set up. That's pretty courageous. They're announcing their loyalty to God no matter what. He can save us. We believe he will save us. But if he doesn't, we're still not going to change. We're not going to back out. Now, these guys have given a direct challenge to Nebuchadnezzar. His claim to be God, everybody's going to worship me. I'm number 1. I'm the best. You're all to honor me. And they said, no, we're not. And so Nebuchadnezzar, of course, gets angry. Up here on the screen, verse 19. Nebuchadnezzar became so furious that his face distorted with rage. You've probably seen this in your household. Okay. I'm just guessing. Just guessing. Nebuchadnezzar became so furious that his face distorted with rage. And he commanded that the furnace, this is almost laughable, be heated 7 times hotter than usual. Then the king ordered some of his strongest soldiers, to bind their hands. This is of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Bind their hands and feet with ropes, which, again, that's unnecessary if you can throw a guy in a fiery pit. Okay, really? We're like overkilling this thing. Bind their hands and feet with ropes and throw them into the blazing furnace. So they tied them up and they threw them into the furnace fully clothed. But because the king, in his anger, had demanded such a hot fire, remember, turn it up to 7, the flames leapt out and killed the soldiers as they threw the 3 men in. Oops. But securely tied up, these 3 men, fell down into the blazing flames of the furnace. Okay? Now, what happened next is 6 things. And when you know these 6 things, you're going to take a deep breath when you're going through the fire, when the heat's on in your life, when you feel like you're going under, when you feel like everything's coming at you, you're under enormous pressure. What happens when I trust God in the furnace? Number 1, when I'm going through the fire, if I trust Him, God will walk through the fire with me. That's a big relief right there. You won't be alone. God's presence will be with you. Over and over and over again, God has promised His presence no matter what you go through if you will trust Him. He says, I will be with you. I will be with you. And so in Daniel chapter 3, verse 24, 25, they throw him in this fiery furnace, and here's what happens. Suddenly, Nebuchadnezzar, this is the biggest emperor in the world at the time, Nebuchadnezzar jumps up in amazement, and he asks his advisor, didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them in the furnace? Yes, we did, his advisor said. Yeah, we did. Well, look now, he shouted. You can see 4 men now in the furnace. They're walking in the furnace, unbound. That means the ropes are burned off. Walking around freely in the fire, walking around, unharmed. And this 4th man, this 4th guy that you can see in there, look at him, he's right there. He looks like a son of the gods. It wasn't a son of the gods. It was the Son of God. It was Jesus. Jesus was walking through the fire with them. Walking through the fire with them. And He's promised to walk through the fire with you too. Jesus said, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. Is God a liar? No. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. Almost the last words that Jesus said when He gave the Great Commission before He goes back to heaven were these on the wall. Matthew 28:20. Jesus said, I will always be with you to the very end of the age. Okay, second, write this down. Second benefit, if I have faith in the furnace, God will burn off everything tying me down. I love this. God will burn off everything tying me down. Do you notice that in this fire, they didn't get burned, their clothes aren't singed, they're not even, they don't even smell of the fire. The only thing that got burned off were the man-made ropes they'd been tied up with. Question, what's got you tied up? What's holding you back? What's limiting you from being all you're meant to be? What are the limitations in your life that God wants to burn off in your life? You see, God may take you through the fire. You're going to come out on the other side unhinged, unsinged, untouched, unburnt. But the things that will be burned off, the stuff that's tied you down, the stuff that was holding you back, the limitations in your life. You see, pain never leaves you where it finds you. When you're going through life, you're walking through life, pain picks you up over here, but it doesn't drop you off there. When it finishes, it drops you off over here, and you're not the same woman. You're not the same man, because your character has been tested, refined, and grown in the fire. And all of a sudden, you're over here before the fire, you're immature. Now you come out of the fire mature. Over here, you didn't trust God at all. You're full of doubts. Over here, now pain leaves you. You trust God. You're full of confidence. And God has burned off the stuff in your life that was holding you back. Isaiah 48, verse 10. I have refined you, but not in the way that silver is refined. Rather, I have refined you in the furnace of suffering. You're not going to go through a fiery furnace literally in your life, but you are going to go through the furnace of suffering many, many times. And God is refining you in that fire. Number 3, here's a third one. This is a big one. If I trust God when the heat is on, God will give me a new freedom. A new freedom. You're going to come out on the backside of that fiery furnace with a new liberty, a new freedom. You're not so bound up. Now, the Bible is full of examples and testimonies to this, that what people in the world mean to use to enslave you, or what people mean to use to entrap you, or to destroy you, God wants to use that very problem in your life to liberate you, to set you free from the expectations of other people, to set you free from the opinions of other people, to set you free from a lot of other things that are holding you back and tying you down. One example, Psalm 66, verse 12, and they say there, you let the captors set foot on our neck. This is actually talking about when the Jews were slaves in Egypt. They said, God, you allowed that. You allowed us to be slaves and set the captors foot on our neck. But he says, then we went through fire and water, and you led us out to freedom. Circle that word, freedom. God wants you to be free. You know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And it often comes at a very high cost and a lot of heat. Number 4 things that happen. If I trust God when the heat is on, if I have faith in the furnace, number 4, God will make sure I come out unharmed. And here's what happens in the story. Look at this on the screen. Verse 26. Then, after they had thrown him in the fire, Nebuchadnezzar came as close as he could to the door of the flaming furnace. Okay? And he shouted, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, servants of the Most High God. Where'd that one come from? Hello, we've had a pagan king converted right here in front of everybody else. He's going, obviously, their God's the real deal. My God's a fake. My God's a phony. Servants of the Most High God. He's saying this in front of everybody else. Come out. Come out at once. He's saying like Richard Dawson, come on down, you know. So it says, the 3 men stepped out of the fire. Then the princes and the prefects and the governors and the advisors, these are all the co-workers of these guys, crowded around them and saw that the fire had not even touched them. Not a hair on their head was singed. Their clothing was not scorched. They didn't even smell of smoke. Okay, number 5. 5th thing in the text, it tells us this. If I trust God when the heat is on, when I show faith in the furnace, number 5, it will bring unbelievers to God. Wow. It's a testimony. It's a witness. It will bring unbelievers to God. How you handle pain, how much you trust God when you're in pain, when you are under pressure, when the heat is on in your life, will probably be your most powerful witness and your most powerful testimony in your life. You're not much of a witness when everything's going good in your life. But when you're faithful to God and you trust God implicitly and explicitly, when you're in pain, you're under pressure, you're in the fire, and people go, how are they doing that? How are they handling that? That is a witness, that is a testimony to God. Then the king said, praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel to rescue his servant. He didn't know it's Jesus. Who sent his angel to rescue his servant. They trusted in him. Those 4 words, they trusted in him. When I die, I want you to put those 4 words on my tombstone. He trusted in him. And I hope that one day when you die, we can put them on your tombstone. You trusted in God. There is no greater epitaph for your life than that. You trusted in God. They trusted in him. That's the highest compliment. They trusted in him. That's why they're coming out unharmed. And Nebuchadnezzar says, they defied my command. I'm the most powerful guy in the world. I'm leading the biggest empire of the day. They defied my command, and they were willing to die rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Now, here's what happens in this story. Look at the next verse, verse 29. Nebuchadnezzar says this, therefore, I make this decree. He's got a new decree now. The first one was everybody bow down to me. Here's the new decree. If anyone says anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they will be put to death and their houses will be destroyed. Well, he hadn't lost his dictator quality yet, obviously. Okay. He's offering capital punishment. We would not do that, okay? Okay? You have a right to believe whatever you want to believe, and I will support you in that right. But the bottom line is, he goes, okay, he's just saying, nobody's going to diss the true God because this is the real deal. This is the real God. And he says, so nobody's going to badmouth the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He says, there is no other God who can save anyone like this. And then notice the rest of the verse. It says, then the king promoted, here's that word again, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to even higher positions in the province of Babylon. Now, finally, there's one more thing. If I have faith in the furnace, and if I trust God when the heat is on, number 6, God will reward my faith in heaven. God will reward my faith in heaven. There are going to be rewards given out in heaven for how much you trusted God. This has nothing to do with your salvation. It has to do with after your salvation, how much you trusted God the rest of your life. 1 Corinthians 3, verses 10 down to verse 15. Each of us must be careful how we build. He's talking about our lives. Because Christ is the only solid foundation. Don't build it on popular opinion. Build it on Christ. Whatever we build on that foundation will be tested by fire. You might want to circle that. It's coming. You're going to go through the furnace. We'll be tested by fire. And here's the test. If what we build in our lives is left standing, we will be rewarded. There are going to be rewards in heaven. But if what we've built is burned up by the fire, we will lose our reward. Yet, we will be saved, like someone escaping from flames. I want you to have great rewards in heaven. How do you get them? By trusting God in the fire. By doing it His way. By caring more about what God says than what everybody else in the world says. God is watching to see, are you going to listen to Him or are you going to listen to the people around you?